Yeah, my kids went to see that. So.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'm glad you all ventured out on this really cold night. I'm Helen Wilson, Vice President of the Squirrel Hill Historical Society. The other Vice President is Betty Conley, who's there. And Michael Ehrman, our President, couldn't be here tonight, so he sends his greetings from Sarasota. And before we begin our talk, I have good news and bad news. I don't know which you want first. The good news is that our summer tour in June is going to be Homewood Cemetery again. So it's a very interesting tour because there's a lot of history. So there will be more information about that later on. Bad news is that right now, as of yesterday, Michael called me and said that St. Edmund's School it's under a new principal who doesn't want people to park in the parking lot on the school side of the lot. Not tonight, tonight's fine, but after this, unless we can straighten this out, Michael asks that people park on the as you're coming in from Forbes, you would park on the right side, the church side of the parking lot, and not against St. Edmund's, not against the school side.
How about the whole parking lot?
He said that's the schools.
Don't use that.
So don't use it unless you hear, unless he finds out more or works out something with the school. But this just happened, so we don't know exactly what the upshot is going to be eventually. But right now, as of next time, just try to park along the just the church parking lots, the church parking spaces. Okay. All right. Let's see. I don't know if you've been to Carnegie Library in Squirrel Hill. We have our display up. This one's been up. It's on what exactly went on at the corner of Forbes and Shady where the library stands. What went on there in the past from the early days till present. So if you haven't seen it, it's going to be up for another few weeks, and then we're going to put a new one up. Try to change it every 2 months. We're continuing our membership drive, so you can sign up as a member. It's $10 a year. Membership forms are in the back, and you can give either me the money or Evelyn, who's our treasurer. And now I welcome you to this talk on 9 Mile Run, Reimagining the Impossible. And our speakers, we have two tonight. Zelda Curtis, retired Department of Environmental Protection attorney who worked for the DEP for 29 years. Following her retirement, she taught an environmental law clinic at the Duquesne University Law School. As a DEP attorney, she was involved with several aspects of the environmental issues in the 9 Mile Run Watershed. She's now a board member of the 9 Mile Run Watershed Association. Her associate, Lisa Brown, is the former director of operations and outreach for the 9 Mile Run Watershed Association. While there, she spoke and wrote extensively about the history, restoration, and condition of this unique urban stream. She's currently a PhD student in social and comparative analysis at the University of Pittsburgh. So I'd like you to welcome our two speakers.
Can you hear me? Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. I'm off the 9 Mile Run board this year. I had 2 terms, so it doesn't really matter, but just so that you know the whole story. Okay. So we're going to be talking about 9 Mile Run, and it's really very interesting, and I had a lot of fun learning all of this. I'm going to do the history, and then Lisa will do what has happened with the revegetation, the restoration of the whole site. It's really quite wonderful. So let us start. Okay, this is the 9 Mile Run Watershed. First thing, why is it called 9 Mile Run? Anybody know? Okay, that's what the answer was. However, that's the wrong answer I learned when I went to... What?
What was the answer he said?
Oh, he said because it's 9 miles, yeah. It was 9 miles from the point is what I was told what I thought. And then I went over to John Schomburg's office and he has a new map. And the answer is that's wrong. It's 7 miles. I guess we have better methods of mapping now. So it's 7. But I guess if, where is, there, the stream comes in there. The watershed is 6.5 square miles. So if we go up this way, probably we could say, oh, but there's 2 miles, so we can get 9 miles, okay? So that's how I square it in my head. We're going to talk about a watershed, and in a minute we'll talk about that. The communities that are in this watershed, Cedar Pittsburgh, Edgewood, Wilkinsburg, Penn Hills, there's a little bit over here, Braddock Hills, and Swissvale. Okay, this place look familiar? It's funny, up here it's different than on my computer. The actual flowing stream, I hope you can see it. It's a blue line on the computer. It's kind of green here. We'll come back to this. So, an important question, what is a watershed? Anybody know, want to take a crack at it, or you want me to tell you? All right. Okay, that's exactly right. A watershed is an area of land where all the water under the land or running off the land goes into the same place. It's called the base flow, and you've got springs, seeps, and groundwater. So let's go back there, and the watershed is in red, and all of the water that falls here flows into 9 Mile Run and what was tributary to 9 Mile Run many years ago. I don't know if you can see some dotted lines. Does that help at all? Okay. Those are streams that used to be open, but through the development, through people moving to this area, have been culverted. So the only thing that is open today are what you see as solid lines. Okay? And very interestingly, when I looked at this, and I've done this a few times, and looked at the maps, I can't tell you how many times, I learned that in the street in front of my house, it's culverted underneath, and I never knew that. So it was, you know, oh my gosh. Okay. All right. This is fun, what I'm going to show you now. If you can close your eyes and imagine what the whole area was back in the late 1800s, 1900s. I have a couple of pictures to show you. And it's like being in a different place. All right, so this is the first one. It's a farmhouse. You see the hills. Reproduction isn't too good. There's a stream. Can you see right there? The stream is going through. Nobody's here. It's just all green, and you can picture maybe deer running and all kinds of animals. This, we think, dates from the early 1900s. Here's another one. You can see the stream. I mean, it's gorgeous. Can you see people there walking? At least that's what I think I see. At this time, the population was 8 people per acre. Okay, look what we have here. So, it's really quite wonderful.
Is this going through Frick Park or where's this at?
Oh, okay, good question. I'll go back, since it's so easy. Okay. This is Frick Park here. Okay?
Right, those photos, where are the photos? Where are the photos
No,
from?
the
Oh.
photos are from, are in the valley, in the 9 Mile Run Valley in Frick Park. Yes,
Yeah, thank you.
yes, that's where they are. Those particular ones.
All right. This, see the farmhouse? And I guess those are some wagons there. This is grading for Commercial Avenue. Okay? I think it's just really cool. Especially when you think of Commercial Avenue today. All right. And this is overlooking, it's really not
That's
terribly
Braddock
clear.
Avenue.
Right, yeah, it's overlooking Braddock Avenue. This is an oil well. See some works with the oil well.
There's a parkway in there?
No,
Where
this is
was the
before the
parkway?
Yeah, this is way
Went down
before the
through
parkway.
there.
This is way before the parkway. The stream is right here. The stream is coming in right here.
Hard to see.
And over there was probably where Union Switch and Signal was.
Yes, and it's on what we have here, but you can't see it here. Union Switch and Signal. And during the 19th century, this valley was used for farming, for salt works. How do I get it to go down, Lisa?
Sorry.
Yeah, you have to,
You
oh,
have to go.
okay. Yes, no? Okay. Gas wells, and as a golf course. Did you know we had one so close? So these are old photos.
So that one woman that, I forget her name, she had a house down there up to about 1890s.
Yes,
Century Progress Road or something like that. What was her name?
Jane Grace Wishow? Is that who you're talking about? I don't know.
Well, sign's right down there where Braddock Avenue comes down.
That's
over the left.
Yeah, that's Jane Grace Wishow.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so she moved out there from Pittsburgh because she wanted to get away from all the noise.
right. And it looks like she
So
did.
this was a country.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Okay, so with those pictures of the background, now we're going to go in and see what happened when people started moving into the area. So, 1900s brought dramatic changes, as you can imagine, early urbanization, people moving in, slag, we'll talk about that, and then government indifference, we'll talk about that, and at the end, a miracle, okay? Not a lot of miracles. Now, you can imagine what happens when people move into an area, okay? They build houses, you have sewage, they have privies, they have cesspools, they have to get rid of the sewage, and it all goes to the stream. And from the stream here, it goes to the Mon River. It's all quite lovely. So we have some pictures of that. The pictures come from official pictures taken by a photographer for the city of Pittsburgh. Some of them are 1911, some of them are 1921. Most of the pictures are in Homewood. And at one point I took a map and I identified where in Homewood they were, just for interest. So it's just so interesting to me. Okay. This is in Homewood. This is 1911 Oakwood Street. Anybody know where Oakwood is? You see this house here that is precariously perched over a stone culvert? So we're talking people move in, what do you have? You have houses, you have streets, and you realize all of this is starting to make that gorgeous valley impervious, because when there was nothing there and it rained, the water would fall down on the land, into the stream, into the tribs, and flow very nicely. Well, you can see we're starting to interrupt that a little bit. So this is a 1911 photo, and this looks like a bunch of garbage to me. Okay? Again, I think this is all kind of cool. All right, again, 1911, a culvert at the Illinois Central Railroad, and this is Homewood again. I never heard of this railroad, but okay, and here's the culvert, and you see all the garbage, and the pipes and the stream coming through. Again, 1911, this is Smith Way, flood damage to the wooden drain. Here's drain, you see the houses. Can't really see this guy here, down there. And I think you can tell that they know they're being photographed because they're all looking in one direction. They're looking at the camera, okay? This here is clothing on the clothesline. And you all remember that, right? What else is here that you can't see? It's hard. This is a building with a big stack. Hard to see it. But it's a mess, huh? Okay. Another one, this is looking south on Susquehanna Street. Again, this is 1911. Here you've got the stream. Two houses here. Doesn't look like that today. (1931). This is lining the stream. Okay? And this is, I believe, slate here. And again, the guy's looking at the camera. More people here. But you still can see how pretty it is. You don't see lots and lots of people. But you see what happens when people move into an area. You've got the sewage, you've got to deal with the sewage. You can't have it running everywhere, so they're starting to direct it all into the stream. And of course, it's untreated, and oh well. One of the things I learned is we didn't have our sewage treated with Alcosan until 1959. How'd you like that? I know, I couldn't believe it. Could not believe it. Okay, here's another good one. 1922, a sewer trench on Batavia Street, east of Oakwood. Right, the wood, the soils, this is how they're doing it. So these pictures and more are available if you were to go online. What is it? The historical pictures of University of Pittsburgh.
The University
Right.
of Pittsburgh Archives.
Right, and it's fun just looking through them if you want to have a lot of laughs and find it interesting. Okay, another one, 1921, 66-inch brick sewer on Conemaugh. And this sewer is not, I don't know what, 9 miles long. Here it goes. House back there. So, and this is all underneath the ground now. Okay. And another 1921 multi-way, this is called, south of Kelly Street, concrete sewer, and it's 96 inches, says by 96 inches, that doesn't make any sense though. Yeah, okay, and,
Square, I guess.
It's 8 feet wide.
yeah,
Well, it's the diameter of the pipe.
Well, yeah, it wouldn't be diameter, it would be, they were square.
yeah, right.
They were square.
Right, and this information I have comes from the pictures themselves. This is, you know, nothing original with me.
What year was that?
This is 1921. Yes, yeah, you know where it is, Arlene? Okay, yeah, they were all in Homewood. I don't know why the city photographer took them all in Homewood, but they're all in Homewood. So I guess maybe that's where the population went? Does that make sense? Okay. That's as good an answer as any, okay. And here, this is a 1955 picture, and this is something that still exists. This is the culvert where the 9 Mile Run daylights on South Braddock. You know where the cerebral palsy building was there? Now, what does it say on the
Well,
building?
it says class.
Class is what it says now, right. And if you go, there are some streetcar tracks there, and if you go a little bit, you can see where the stream daylights, and that structure is there. It is still there.
Well,
And,
I'd like to tell you a story about this. When I was a teenager, we went through all these pipes,
yes,
and back, you go up so far, and then you could drive a tractor trailer through both the sides. And when you get a big rain, that thing practically fills up to the top.
yes, yes,
So you keep going up, and then you hit a big intersection. The one goes to the left, it goes over to Homewood. That's a real big one.
okay,
And then the other one goes to the right. That goes through Edgewood, and it goes underneath the Columbia Hospital. The one going to Homewood goes underneath the Columbia Hospital taps and right beside.
yeah,
The one going to Wilkinsburg, you know, there was a stream coming down from, if you know where Montier Street is, you go up where Robinson Boulevard is, where the big shopping center used to be up on top of East Hills, I think it was.
yeah, we know where that is.
Okay, well,
Our kids used to go to school there,
all along there,
yeah,
there was Dream City Park. And on the other side, they finally got the brick garden. But all that stream come down into
okay,
originally a culvert in it's written on the walls, 1924.
okay. Well, way back when we looked at the map, I don't know if you paid attention to how much of it is open and how much of it is culverted. And more is culverted, as you're saying, than is open today. So, yeah, okay, moving along. So we're leaving all of these lovely photographs now to something that I think you all know about, and that is slag. And you know what slag is, where it comes from? Right, from steel making. So we're going into some slag. And this again is very interesting, some basic facts. The slag that was disposed in the area that you all saw when you were entering the Squirrel Hill tunnels on your left, 200 acres, 20 stories high, 17 million that number is. 17 million cubic yards. It's quite incredible, okay? And how did it all happen? It happened from Duquesne slag. And this is an interesting story, and it's, I guess, a story about government, so you're not going to be surprised. Duquesne slag was established in 1906. The first zoning in Pittsburgh was 1923. They purchased land there, 94 acres, in 1922. So they were allowed to be a non-conforming use because they owned the land before the zoning. Okay? And Duquesne Slag kept purchasing land there until 1962. They disposed of slag, I don't know if I can do this, Lisa, from J&L and from U.S. Steel Homestead, right across the river. More notes there. Okay, so, all right, that's fine. Okay, well, all right, so here's a picture of slag being disposed. We do not think that it is the place that we're talking about, 9 Mile Run, what do you call it? Century 3. That's where we think this picture was taken. There are not a lot of pictures around of the slag being disposed. I mean, I met with Joel Tarr when I was putting this together, used some of his pictures, went to a bunch of resources, and we just did not find it. So you're looking at the few pictures that we found. Okay. This is 1927, and I think this is the 9 Mile Run watershed. And I think we're talking over there. Have a little trouble trying to figure it out. This is the stream. Can you do any better, Lisa? I mean, I looked at it.
That is the railroad track that's
Okay.
going through Duck Hollow. If you notice, there is no slag pile of slag there.
Right.
You know,
Right.
basically there's no slag there. But as you over here is Duck Hollow. This is looking down from, I believe, the other side of the stream somewhere.
Okay.
So
That bridge, what's that bridge? You can see a bridge up
that's
there.
the railroad trestle.
No,
It
that's
was
the
it was actually it
Edgewood-
burned.
Edgewood
It
Mall,
burned it all.
Edgewood Town Mall's right over, right
No,
over there.
no. This is down near the mouth, closer to the mouth of the stream, near the lawn, closer to the lawn.
Okay, and this picture Lisa just gave me is Duck Hollow, yes? Okay. This is slag,
It's now Somerset.
okay, and it's now Somerset at Frick Park. The hottest address in town, right?
Why does that look so white?
I think it's, you know what, it's a distortion of the color from your projector. It's
Yeah.
really sort of pinkish.
Yeah, it is.
Pinkish reddish,
Yeah,
yes.
yeah. There's a lot of distortion.
Yeah, and part of it is that it's the reason it was light is slag is as Zelda said, it's a byproduct of steel making, and it's what happens is they take the iron ore and they heat it at very high temperatures with limestone, and what happens is the ore melts off and the iron melts off, and then all of the impurities attach to the limestone. So limestone itself is pretty light colored, and so those impurities attach to the limestone, and that's what the slag is. So, and slag, it looks like volcanic rock. It basically looks like something you would see from, because it's been heated at very, very high temperatures. So,
Okay, now we're going into, try to answer the question, how did this happen? Why didn't somebody stop it? And I'm sure you all know about that kind of stuff. So, government indifference. There were people who tried, it never happened until 1996. And there is a hero in this story, okay? So let's start with a little history. There's a statute, 1905, the Pure Waters Act, precursor to the present Clean Streams Law. I looked it up today, and it said you couldn't dump raw sewage into a stream, but only if you were a new municipality. Well, those municipalities were not new, so that didn't help us at all. Okay. Then there was something called the Civic Commission, and they were doing urban planning and reform. And a person whom you've heard of, his name is Frederick Law Olmsted, prepared a report. And he talked about downtown roads, conservation of steep slopes. He wanted a large park in the 9 Mile Run Valley. The mayor at that time, another familiar name, McGee, heard that name? A lot of familiar names going on here. And his administration ignored the steep slope suggestion and the acquisition of 9 Mile Run. What they did do is they improved traffic downtown. This commission faded away. However, we had a hero, and that hero again is Mr. Olmsted. Now, can we read this? Yes. He saw 9 Mile Run Valley as a possible location for a park. In 1919, Henry Clay Frick endowed the city with 150 acres of land for the park, a $2 million trust fund, and additional purchases made so that the park is now 600 acres. And this is what Mr. Olmsted said. You want me to read it, or you want to read it for yourselves?
Read it.
Read it, okay. Perhaps the most striking opportunity noted for a large park is the valley of 9 Mile Run. It is so excluded by its high wooden banks that the close proximity of urban development can hardly be imagined. The entire valley, from the top of one bank to the top of the other, should be included, for upon the preservation of these wooded banks depends much of the real value of the parks. Hello, yes, right? Okay, 1910. So remember that guy. Also, if you go to CMU Osher, one of his descendants is there teaching a class. John is his name. So, okay. All right. Next government organization, again worthless, Civic Club of Allegheny County. And here the members sought recreation, not open space. Olmsted's recommendations again disregarded. And this group received money from the city, but they didn't use it for the park. Next is the Department of City Planning, and this was authorized by the state, but it had no regulatory power. Next, we think 1918, Citizens Committee on the City Plan. This was, the head of this was, ready? Guy named Armstrong. Heard of him? Armstrong Cork. The vice president was Richard B. Mellon. Okay. And in 1923, they did a report of parks, and they thought, make 9 Mile Run into a watershed attraction, use public funds. 1923, we saw zoning, but they had no aesthetic controls. 9 Mile Run residential, but again, too late, because we had slag starting to come. All right, here we go. See all that red? That red is impervious. Impervious surfaces. So it's kind of hard to see everything on these maps. It's too bad. The dotted lines are all culverted streams, tributaries, whatever. And just the solid line is what we have today. Okay, a few more and then Lisa goes. This is the main outfall culvert at Braddock Avenue. And this is in a rain event. You see all the water just pouring out into the stream. It's lovely. It's going to get better. This is litter. Stormwater, when you have a rain event, all of the overflows from all of the municipalities. And I have to say, the first time I was here was in the year 2000, and I'm walking there and I saw all of this stuff, and I was with a good friend, and I said, "What is all that?" And she told me. I didn't know, I didn't appreciate it, and today it's beautiful, but it wasn't then. So that's just all the junk that comes through with every rain event. And this is a good one. That's a sewer. And that's what happens when you have a heavy rain. And this is fondly called the fecal fountain. Yeah. Okay? And where does all the water come from? It comes from our downspouts, our driveways, leaking pipes, leaking joints, storm sewers, foundation drains, just everything. It's kind of cool, you know, in a silly way. Okay. 1996. Finally, it's going to happen. And CMU that you read about in the paper every single day. So they had the Studio for Creative Inquiry. They recognized the value. They did a 3-year study of the stream, and they advocated for stream restoration. But how did it happen? What's different all these years? This is 1996, and we were looking at 1900. It's almost a century. Okay. So there's a statute, a federal statute, called the Water Resource Development Act, which provides for Section 206 habitat. And you had to have public interest in the rehabilitation. It had to be cost effective and cost sharing. The federal government would put in money, but the local community had to put in money. The Army Corps of Engineers put in $5.5 million. The city groups put in $2 million. We have $7.5 million. This is the largest urban project of the Army Corps of Engineers in the United States of America. Okay? And we had the support of Senators Doyle and Specter and Representatives Coyne and Mascara, and I thought it was important to give them credit for finally doing something that took 100 years to do. And once again, the hero, way back, the guy with the vision, Frederick Law Olmsted. Okay?
Zelda,
Yeah,
how much rain does it take to cause an overflow into the Mon River?
1/10 of an inch?
That's what I've heard.
Yeah.
It's a tenth of it, it can be as little as a tenth of an inch, and our average rainfall here is 1/4 of an inch for a rain event.
That's 10 years, 24
I'd like to,
hours.
I'd like to add something. If you go down to where you seen all that sewer stuff coming out,
Yeah,
when I was a boy, you know, about 1950, you'd walk down there, you can still see the cement on there, on
Yes.
the walkway.
yes.
Yeah.
But you would get about 2 blocks from there and you could smell
Oh,
it.
You
They must have redone it somehow.
There's a storm sewer overflow in the stream right near Commercial Avenue, and you can smell it, you can see it.
All right, over to the left of that, when you get, when you're going down over to the left, there's a trail going up to the slag. You can go up on the right. On the left, this trail goes up. They got the regular bicycle trail
Yes.
goes down there.
Yeah.
You get up on the top of that. That's about the most scenic place anywhere around.
It
They
is.
got all them
It's quite
trees,
nice.
Yes,
and there are still houses up there.
yes.
Yeah.
Is there anything? Too
Yeah.
bad somebody can't buy that before they screw it all up.
Do you want this?
Yeah, I might make that one. Where's the press that one? Okay. So, Zelda left us in 1996, and she talked about the stars aligning for something to happen with 9 Mile Run, finally, after almost 100 years. This is what the stream pretty much looked like in 1996. It was a concrete lined channel or a deeply incised natural channel that kind of followed the edge of the hill along the parkway. So not very attractive, not much flow going on here. If it didn't look like that, it looked like this. This was when they did repair work on the parkway. Instead of hauling the debris away, they just dumped it into the stream. I mean, it's not much different from that photo that Zelda showed you previously, where people were just dumping their trash into the stream. So basically, you know, for 100 years, people were using the stream as their trash receptacle. The other thing with all of the stream channel, we had this deep erosion here, which, you know, every time it rained, the water would come up, it would cut into the hillside, all of this sedimentation would end up in the stream. If there was anything living in the stream at the time, they would be choked. They couldn't breathe. Another photo of extreme erosion here. These are tree roots. So this tree is ready to drop into the stream. This is, again, that outfall culvert. This is without the rain, but this is what it looked like, how much erosion, and this is an overflow here.
I got one question. Where is that, you got train tracks, streetcar
No,
tracks?
those
coming
are
down
streetcar tracks. This is up where the old food land was.
Right.
It's right at the corner of Braddock and the Parkway.
Where did the streetcar tracks go? It must have went over there before they built that.
No, there was like a streetcar turnaround here, you know, like where they would end, and you would have, you know, you see them. They would end right here. People would load and unload from the streetcar. So, and this is blocked off now. But in the 1950s, you know, you talked about going up here and walking up here. In the 1950s, there were a couple of boys, bunch of boys who were here, and they were playing around right here, and it started to rain. And to get out of the rain, they ran up inside here, and one of them drowned. And
When I first went down there, we had a big push. We were gonna go to Florida. We figured the thing went to Florida. But
yeah,
about
all
14
kids think
kids,
that.
they come down there and there was a steel rod sticking out. And I couldn't figure out why they let that steel rod sticking out. When it rained, those kids went in there, most of them ran off, but one kid held on to that till it got to, they let go and they found him in the Mon River.
Yeah. So this again, we're going to talk about the slag a little bit again. And I told you about slag being a byproduct of the steel industry, and that it uses limestone. Well, that makes for a highly alkaline environment. Basically, this section of the stream down here, the pH was about that of ammonia or bleach. So it's very, very high pH. Nothing could live in the stream. So if anything could venture, you know, even thought they might, you know, those little critters down here, fish or anything, thought that, oh, this might be a good place to go live, they didn't get very far, you know. So because the alkalinity would kill them. So just think about putting your goldfish into a little bowl of bleach. How nice that would be. So what happened with the restoration? We had all of this great energy around the stream. The Center for the CMU's Center for Creative Inquiry really pushed at this. There were two individuals, really, Tim Collins and his wife Reiko, were very instrumental in moving this forward. And they were artists, basically. They were interested in how people interact with the environment and how they could reimagine what was going on for the stream. Because guess what happened? Really, the impetus for all of this was the slag. The slag was 200 and some acres of undeveloped land in the city of Pittsburgh. And it overlooked the Mon. It had this great view. And it was a great place for redevelopment, which is what's happening there now. But the original plans were to fill in the stream. Basically, they were going to start to build here, they were going to build on both sides of the stream, and they were going to fill this in and cover up the stream. And so people were sort of like, you know, people who were familiar with Frick Park and people who were familiar with other cities and how they interacted with their urban water were like, that's not what we want here. So they had created this great political will. And in fact, a lot of the information on 9 Mile Run was stored at the at the library here in Squirrel Hill. There was a lot of background information, and it was open to the public to see what was going on, so that people really generated a lot of interest, of public interest around restoring the stream. So we got the interest of the Army Corps, we got the federal government involved, we got the local people involved, and so the restoration, plans for the restoration proceeded. What were some of the techniques they used? They created more meanders in the stream. Meanders are those sort of serpentine curves to slow down the water. They reconfigured the stream bed. They made floodplains. They created pools and riffles. Pools and riffles are, you know, wider areas for fish to stay. Riffles are areas where the water flows over rocky areas and becomes oxygenated. They had standing snags and root wads and brush piles. Those are all things that happen in a natural environment. They stabilized the stream banks. They used rocky walls. They created willow walls along there. They created new wetlands, and they planted it all with native plant species. So why was 9 Mile Run chosen for this? Because of the political will, but also because the Army Corps had done some lock and dam work in the upper Mon, and they had destroyed some wetlands. And according to the law, you have to recreate wetland. If you are destroying wetlands, you have to do something to bring those back. Doesn't have to be in that same place. So guess what? 9 Mile Run was the perfect place for the Army Corps to do that. So they said, this is a great, we've got all of the, everything together, everything is happening, we're going to move forward with this.
So where is it that they destroyed wetlands?
It was in the Mon up, towards, they were doing some lock and dam work up there, and I'm not really exactly sure, nobody really has told me exactly where it was, but that was why. This is a map of the restoration. This dark blue line here, and here, and here, are the open channels, the original open channels. Yes?
What year was the Army Corps of Engineers involved, or started to get to be involved?
In the late 90s.
Okay.
The restoration did not happen until 2000. It wasn't completed until 2006.
Well, because I was on a plenary session that CMU, the Studio for Creative Inquiry, held years ago. I think it was probably 96 or so. And I remember people went into little
That was
breakout sessions.
Yes, that was for 9 Mile Run, and it was in 96 they started.
Okay, yes, and then I actually remember I brought up an idea about having wetlands with biological filtration because it was based on something I learned at work. And I don't remember the Army Corps of Engineers being involved at that point. I was just wondering when.
They were not involved in those initial community things, no. They became involved later, when it came time for money. But if you see these dark blue areas, this was where the original stream channel was. This This light blue area is the stream channel today. After the restoration, you can see that they made these bends wider. They made the stream channel wider. They opened up all of this area. This was all culverted, and they opened all of this up. This is Fern Hollow up in here. And so they, and these are some sewer lines, I think, along here. No, those are the trails. I'm sorry, that's the trails. So they created, this over here is a wetland. They created this wetland. They did some floodplain along here. So they did a lot of work on this, and they moved the stream channel away from the hillside. Now, the interesting thing is that, you know, streams don't usually follow the base of a hill. They usually go into the middle of a valley. So why was the stream over here in the first place? Well, because all of this was farmed, farmers used to redirect stream. They needed water, but they didn't want it in the middle of their fields. So they would redirect it along the edge of their fields, which was usually along the edge of a hill. And so the stream had been redirected over here for probably over 100 years. So these are really washed out. I'm sorry about these colors. But this is what I'm working on creating these. This is a floodplain they're creating here, floodplain here. They've made the channel wider. This was where the stream channel originally was, back in here behind these trees. So they moved it out here. This is up in Fern Hollow. This was the first section that they did. This is the trail that follows Fern Hollow up to Falls Ravine. They've created all these rocky areas. They opened up the stream. They directed it through here. These trees here are called standing snags. They're basically dead trees that they stuck in the ground for habitat. This is a root wad. They took the bottom of a tree that they had removed from out here and they stuck it into the side. So all of these roots are hanging out here, and they collect debris for invertebrates to live on, to chew on. And then they created, this is also a wetland area down through here. They planted this all with native species. If you go down there now, this is all overgrown. This is not like this. This is all overgrown with native species, and then in the summertime it's just filled with wildflowers. It's just beautiful. You can see, you know, lots of bees and butterflies and there are a lot of creatures living down here now. It's really quite impressive. This is a wetlands that they created, another standing snag right here. And this is a wetland moisture monitor right here to make sure that the area is kept moist. But this is all along the trail down towards Commercial. So this is all on the right as you're moving through the park down to Commercial Avenue. This has been redesigning the channel. This is a floodplain over here. This is all the rock that they used to stabilize this bank here. The interesting thing is, if you notice, this is an outside curve, this is an inside curve. The inside curves all have floodplains. The outside curves are reinforced. And the reason for that is when we do have high water volume and velocity, it comes downstream, it sort of bangs against this hard wall here, this stabilized wall, and it's directed into the floodplain over here. So that the water then seeps slowly through those soils and then recharges the stream from the groundwater below. This is another view. Again, we're looking downstream on this one. Here's the channel that they're going to be, this side of the channel they're going to be reinforcing. This is the floodplain. These are some standing snags here that they're going to introduce. These trees, they took out all the invasive species and they left these beautiful, wonderful sycamore specimens. Some of them we have photos of from back in the early 1900s, this same stand of sycamores. So it's been there for a long time. This is one of the techniques they use for reinforcing the walls there, is they take these shoots, these sort of look like dead shoots of willows, and they bundle them and stick them into the banks. And once they grow and the roots spread out, they've reinforced all those soils along the banks. This is in the wrong order. I'm going to move this here. Wait, I'm sorry. No, it's not. This is that area now.
Is that a John Moyer picture?
This is a John Moyer picture. These are the willows all along here. This is the floodplain in this direction. You can barely see that that's the outside bend we were looking at before. This is the inside of the bend, so the floodplain here is, these are some large sycamores there. This is right below Commercial. You can see very clearly the rocks here on this outside bend, and right here are those sort of look like dead twigs of willows that they've shoved into the stream bank all along here. And this is actually a covering of jute burlap, really, and they used that to keep the soils in place after they planted lots of seeds for native species, native plants. This is that area a year later. So you can see, I mean, it very, very quickly changed. I was working for 9 Mile Run when they completed the project. They had their last year of working on the project, and they completed the project. And it was interesting going down there and seeing that there was really nothing. It was all those sort of burlap areas, and then just the following year, what an amazing transformation was made. So we're going to talk just very briefly about why these kinds of projects are important. You know, Zelda talked about the impervious surface, and she talked about that the fact that we have changed our environment significantly. And one of the things that we've done is we've created a situation where when we have a rain event, whether it's a small rain event or a large rain event, we've interfered with natural hydrology. And what happens in natural environments is when it rains, it comes down onto these, you know, soft soils. Think about when you're walking through a forest and trees. The trees sort of intercept, the leaves will intercept some of that moisture. Anything that comes down gets really absorbed by the soils, and it then seeps through. While it's seeping through those soil layers, it becomes purified, and it ends up recharging our streams and our oceans from this layer of groundwater. This is a non-porous kind of containing rock underneath. But when we have impervious surfaces, we've basically created a situation where, you know, the two things I tell people about water is, one, it goes downhill. And two, it takes the path of least resistance. So if you have a street, the water isn't going to jump over the street to get in your yard. It's going to go down the street as fast as it can downhill. So you end up having these huge flood events because basically your streets act like what I would tell kids when I talk to kids, they act like the log jammer in Kennywood. So all the water flows down those streets, and it picks up everything that's on those streets and ends up going into your rivers and streams instead of where you want it to be. If you have, when it rains in a natural and undisturbed environment, 50% of the rainwater soaks into the ground. 40% evaporates off of the trees, okay? And then only about 10% runs off the surfaces. You don't have that much runoff. You start to add impervious surfaces like rooftops and driveways. So if you have concrete areas, and in rural towns you don't have that much, but you still have a lot. Runoff is doubled, so it doubles. You get almost 20% of runoff. We move into more suburban areas, you end up with 30 to 50% of your runoff because you still don't have, and if you notice too, the other thing is like people love their lawns. In the United States, we love our lawns. Guess what? That's like putting a carpet over your soil. The water doesn't really seep through. You know, when they tell you to water your lawn, they always tell you, you know, you leave the sprinklers on for a long time because it takes a long time for it to go through. And half the time you're watering your sidewalk. So in an urban environment, if you take like downtown Pittsburgh, you've got 75 to 100% of impervious surfaces, and you have over 50% of it runs off. 10% might go into shallow infiltration, and then only 5% goes into your groundwater table. You have a lot, you do have a lot that ends up being evaporated, but it's still, you have a significant amount of runoff. So what have we done here? We've paved paradise. Think about Monroeville Mall. Think about Edgewood Town Center, if you've ever been like Edgewood Town Center. And how often are those parking lots filled? Very rarely. So we go back to our impervious surface area. This is what we have. We have, the only reason why 9 Mile Run is less impervious than most areas in our city is because we've got this huge chunk of Frick Park here. If Frick Park didn't exist, this would all be in red as well. So we end up with situations like this. This was, my colleague and I, Jeff Bergman, took this picture during a rain event in probably around 2006. And we walked out, our offices were in what is now the class building, and we walked out, and the water coming off of Braddock Avenue was up to our knees and through this whole area. And we came across and took the picture. It was pretty impressive. So we then have sewage overflows because we have combined sewers. We have storm sewers that mix with sanitary sewers. We also have some sanitary sewers that overflow because, you know, the water gets in there. We have, you know, Zelda talked about when they built those sewers, they built them in the early 1900s. They were designed to last 100 years. Guess what? That 100 years is over. And there are almost 400 spots along our 3 rivers where combined sewers dump into our rivers. So what does that mean for us, for our region? Our region has a problem with clean water. We are not in compliance with the Clean Water Act. So how do we solve that problem? Well, you've probably heard a lot about what's going on with Alcosan and PWSA and the feasibility studies for our region. There are many people who are looking at green infrastructure as a partial solution. It wouldn't be the entire solution, but as a partial solution for the problems. The benefits of green: you can restore your natural landscape, it reduces stormwater runoff and pollutants, it recharges the groundwater, it increases carbon sequestration, and improves air quality. One of the great things about green infrastructure is that it does reduce pollutants. If you're just building big tunnels and pipes, you're just moving the waters, the polluted water somewhere else. You're not reducing the amount of pollution that's in the water. We can have reduced sewage overflows, which means cleaner rivers and streams, which means increased recreational dollars. We have cooler urban environments, which means reduced energy consumption and dollars saved on reduced heat-related fatalities. We have increased recreational spaces, healthier lifestyles, lower healthcare costs. We have an improved sense of community, reduced per crime. Why? Because there's green space. People are outside. They know their neighbors. They're getting to know the people in their neighborhood. So they have this increased sense of community. And guess what? It increases your property value. Those people who live near Frick Park, some of those houses aren't that great. But boy, their property values are high because they are close to the park. Huge, huge, huge. And they have found that revitalizing business districts, when you have lots of green space next to your business district, people are willing to pay more to shop in business districts that have green space, believe it or not. So what is green infrastructure? Green infrastructure is anything that mimics a natural environment. Trees, street trees are huge. Each mature tree can soak up to 600 gallons of stormwater annually. Another thing you could have is a green roof. This is the green roof at CMU. And guess what? They've been monitoring this. It's pretty great. The reduced energy costs of the building below are pretty significant. Another thing are green streets. They reduce the impervious surfaces. This is all permeable paving. We have these little curb cuts here that direct water from the street into these tree trenches here so that this vegetation gets fed by the water coming off of the street. So you have this permeable paving, you have these great green spaces in front of these houses. So really, really a boon to live in an area like this. This is a permeable paving area where the water comes in. There are retention cells underneath this, and then the water is slowly released into the soils below. This is a bioswale, so it captures the rainwater coming off the street and the sidewalk. And it's basically, just a vegetated area that accommodates all of the water that's coming off during a rainstorm. On a personal level, people can use residential solutions or rainwater harvesting with barrels or other storage options. People can use, cisterns. In fact, my husband and I found an old cistern in our backyard. Our house was built in the 1890s, and we found one, and we're thinking of resurrecting the whole thing and having all of our downspouts diverted to that. A rain garden is another option. That's just sort of a specialized garden that accommodates the water coming off of your roof, or you can direct some paving areas to that. So I'm going to leave you with some sobering facts about the state of our water in the region. Every year, 860 billion gallons of raw sewage are dumped into rivers, lakes, and streams in the United States. This amount could cover the entire state of Pennsylvania in 1 inch of sewage.
Thank you for that information.
Guys, that's a great visual, right? Okay, guess what? Sewage contains harmful bacteria. Does anybody not know that? I'll tell you what, they don't. It contains parasites, viruses, pharmaceuticals, synthetic hormones, and personal care chemicals, all really bad stuff. Okay, 40% of the rivers and 46% of the lakes in the U.S. are too polluted to support fishing, swimming, and aquatic life. That's a lot. That's a lot. What about Allegheny County? 90% of Allegheny County residents get their drinking water from the 4 rivers. The water quality in our region's rivers are unacceptable for recreational contact for as many as 70 days during the boating season due to high bacterial counts. We have, like I said before, over 400 combined sewage overflows sites, outfall sites. So our water is bad, because we do get our water, it's treated, it's good, we can, you know, we can drink our water. This doesn't mean that you can't drink our water. What it means is that because it's so bad, we have to treat it more than we would otherwise, and plus we can't really play in it. Like I love those photos of 9 Mile Run. You look at the stream and it looks fabulous. Guess what? The bacterial counts are off the charts. You know, and I see people with their little kids down there with their feet dangling in the water, and I just, you know, you can't do that, and you can't guarantee that just because it looks clean, that it is clean. So what can you do? If you need to replace or improve your properties, consider some of these greener options. Promote green infrastructure as a cost-effective alternative. Ask your elected officials to choose solutions that will benefit your community most. That's happening in Pittsburgh. We already have a mayor who's really interested in this. We have council members, we have political leaders who are very interested in increasing the amount of green infrastructure as a solution to our stormwater problems. Alcosan is going to devote probably 25% of their budget for green infrastructure. PWSA has already committed over $9 million to promoting green infrastructure in the region. So we are moving forward on this, but you know, as an individual, there are things that you can do as well. So those are some references. This is a photo of the stream. You can see how fabulous this looks. And I want to thank you all for coming out on such a really cold night. Yes?
What about the pH problem? Were they able to fix it?
Yes. The pH problem was fixed by when one of the agreements was with Somerset, when they started to develop that land, was that they had to take care of the runoff, the alkaline runoff from the slag. And they built retention areas down below the slag, and it's diverted directly to Alcosan. Yes?
Along the trail that runs down, it's right near Duck Hollow.
Yes.
There's a rather unattractive chain link fence that goes along the trail, and I cannot figure out why it's necessary to have that.
Paul, can you answer that?
Do you mean near the Glenwood Bridge?
I don't know where the Glenwood Bridge is.
No, he's talking about
the
down
trail
below Duck Hollow.
Duck Hollow.
Yeah, near Duck Hollow, along that trail that runs down along 9 Mile, there's a chain link fence for, 50 yards, I guess. And I don't think it's needed for safety, and I wondered why it was there.
People go bicycle.
I would have to look at it and see. It might be to keep people out of the retention ponds that are there. There are some retention areas there for the runoff, so it might be for that. Yes?
Discuss structures like Squirrel Hill supporting Frick Park. Like I know Central Park in New York City was really revitalized through private efforts. It wasn't done in the city, at least allegedly. That's the story behind it. Is there not more of an effort towards having Squirrel Hill, Point Breeze, and the wealthy areas around there privately funded improving the park?
Well, I mean, I know that there are different organizations that work in the parks, and one of them is the Parks Conservancy. The Pittsburgh Parks Conservancy is committed to revitalizing all the parks in the city. You know, right now they have, they've had this huge commitment with rebuilding the environmental center there and in Frick Park, and so that's been their focus for Frick right now. Now, once they finish with that project, they will probably be looking to fundraise for another capital project in the park. When they do, when they start to think about what their master plan is for the park, and you can go onto their website and get their master plans for all of the parks, and you do have, they do have public input on that. And the Parks Conservancy is, it's supported by many of the residents financially. It's supported by most of the foundations in the region. It's supported by the government. So it's really, there is a mechanism, and it is the Pittsburgh Parks
They're
Conservancy.
currently doing Shenley Park.
They're currently doing,
Doing Shenley Park.
as for what?
Water retention.
For water retention, yes,
yeah,
yes, yes,
Yeah.
yes.
Stopping runoff.
Right, they have been using that. But as far as Frick Park is concerned, the other thing that people need to know about this region, and you know, there are a lot of, you will talk to many folks out there. My background is as a biologist, and I've been working in water resources for quite a number of years. I'm now the watershed coordinator for Sawmill Run. One of the issues that you have to understand about Pittsburgh is that green infrastructure has worked in many other areas. Pittsburgh has unique geology, unique topography, and unique soils. And that combination can really spell disaster for adding too much water into our soils. Think about the Walmart site out in Sewickley, okay? We have very steep hills and clay soils so that when you get a lot of rain, you can end up with landslides. And a lot of water, and if you're adding water to that, if you're gonna divert water to green space that happens to be on our hillsides, which a lot of our green space is you end up with real serious issues. So we have some engineering complexities when we talk about green infrastructure in our region. We want it to happen here because not only does it help solve the problem, but it also helps to improve the quality of life for everyone who lives in this region. But we also need to be very careful about sites that are chosen and techniques that are used.
I grew up in the era where we had a Saturday night bath. The homes today are 4 bathrooms, big whirlpools,
Absolutely.
and the sewage systems which are not capable of
Absolutely. You're absolutely
So
correct.
our lifestyle all across America is the same way.
Absolutely. I have talked to people about this on numerous occasions. I had 3 boys, okay? And when I was growing up, I lived with my grandparents. My grandparents took a bath once a week, a real bath, once a week to go to church, okay? The rest of the week, they filled the sink up and they washed their whole body, you know, from the top down. And that's what they did. You know, I had 3 boys. They sometimes took 4 showers a day. You know, you did laundry once a week back then. People didn't have the number of clothes. I do at least 1 load a day. You know, the amount of water we use is so much more significant. And we have a system that, you know, people couldn't imagine that. You know, my grandparents, even when we moved in with them and we took 1 shower daily, that was scandalous that you would take, you know, how wasteful that was, that you would take 1 shower a day. The people who developed our systems could never have imagined I-79. They could never have imagined Monroeville Mall. That was like, you know, you would have this big, huge area with a giant parking lot, and everybody would have, and it would be filled, that at the top of a watershed, you know? So you end up with, you know, the people in Pitcairn getting flooded out every time it rains. So those are things, yes, you're absolutely correct. Our lifestyles have changed dramatically. And, you know, most people aren't willing to go back. I don't know that I'd be willing to go back to the little, I mean, I've done it, but go back to the little sink once a day. You know, camping, that's fine, but on a daily basis, I don't know. Yeah, yes.
I'm just curious about the impact of all the salt that's used in the winter. Because I mean you'll see whole parking lots that
Yes.
are white
Absolutely.
salt and these.
Absolutely.
things
That's
are using
another
more and more, and
issue,
it puts
that's
it all
another
down.
issue with green infrastructure. I mean, the trees that were planted along August Wilson Center, they lost quite a few of them because of the salt issues. Now, people are working on those problems. There are things that you can add to the soils to counteract the effects of salt, but you have to be diligent. And you have to be diligent about how you apply salt. You know, putting tons and tons and tons of salt doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to work faster or better.
Tell that to the landscaping company.
I know. The landscaping companies are not very good at well, like a lot of folks, they're used to doing things a certain way, and they're not very good at accommodating change. I spoke with some folks in Mount Lebanon, and Mount Lebanon is really one of the leaders in our region. But I spoke to some folks on their township, and they were talking about how, you know, they have Department of Public Works guys who basically, when they take care of the green space in the community, they want to get on that riding lawnmower and they just want to mow. And the thought that they might have to look at a plant and say, well, is that a weed or is that not a weed? In the fall, I was looking out I went out to Shaler. Shaler, about 4 years ago, had put in a big rain garden in the front of their municipal building. And it was highly publicized, great space, very large, and accommodated all the runoff from their municipal building, which was a big building. And I went out there, I saw it when it was first installed, it was great. Went out there this past fall, and they had a big sign there of indicating all the plants that had been planted there and where they were located. My background is in biology, it was in plant biology. I know all those plants, and I looked at what was there, and I looked at the schematics, and they had about 70% of the plants that were supposed to be there were gone. So basically what their public works guys did, they came out with a weed whacker and whacked everything that wasn't a tree. Because, you know, they're like, it's not a geranium or a petunia, it must be a weed.
Toby has a question.
Down on Saline Street under the Parkway,
Yeah.
there is this terrific bar restaurant, Big Jim's on the
Oh,
run.
yes, yes.
I don't see a run. I've never seen a run.
The run is underground. And the run, if you go down there during a storm, the run comes down the street. Because you will see lots of water coming down the street. And that's a location where they installed some green infrastructure.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that green infrastructure is not working the way it's supposed to. Because the curb cuts, the water comes down so quickly that it bypasses the curb cuts. The curb cuts are not big enough to divert the water into the green space.
And they're not angled properly.
One more question?
The old sewers, you know, they were open. You had the curb here and they were open. The water come running down the hill, they went down in there. Now they redone them, so I guess they can't get groundhogs, everything going in, they don't want anything going in the sewers. But they're all flat, and you got sort of corrugated. And the water, usually it'll just run right over them after you get the leaves there. It just clogs them up.
Oh, yeah, you mean
Just
the
run on
entries,
down.
yeah.
They're terrible design.
Well, a lot of times they're just not, they're not, you're absolutely right, the entries to them aren't designed well. Any other questions? Yeah, Paul.
Yeah.
Paul's our Duck Hollow expert, by the way.
Yeah. I noticed in the last few years, in the spring you see peepers down in the 9 Mile Run area, like near Commercial Street or a little upstream from there, and you know they're very nice. Were they there, 10 or 20 years ago, or is that one of the consequences
It's a
of?
consequence of,
Okay.
of the restoration. It most definitely is. They were not there the first couple years of the restoration. They've come in since. So yes, the habitat enhancements down there are really working. There's lots and lots of new, animals and critters and stuff like that coming in.
I talked about earlier the original 1996, I think it was, Studio for Creative Inquiry session.
The charrettes.
Yeah, and there were also tours and walks around there. There was absolutely nothing. I mean, I have a background in animals and plants and things like that. It was a rarity to find a shrub of any type.
Yes.
It was just basically like concrete almost. There was nothing there. And it was all trash.
So thank you, everyone.